Investigators once said there might be two predators on Long Island, swapping body parts across beaches and pine barrens to throw cops off. Could that actually be true? Hi, I'm Allie. I am still buzzing from last night because I went ghost hunting in an old lighthouse, and my EMF meter went wild in the stairwell.
And I'm Brianne, because of course, the EMF spiked in a lighthouse. It's basically a tube made of metal and electricity. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, scientist. Welcome to the Veil. Unsolved and unbelievable. We are caffeinated, curious, and probably underprepared, which is our brand. All right, moving on. Today's topic is a big one. I kind of kept it from Brianne because I wanted her real-time reaction. We're going to Gilgo Beach, the Long Island serial killer case.
So you've chosen chaos. It's massive, it's messy, and half the internet has a theory about it. Lovely.
Here's what went down. Back to the story. In 2010, police were searching for a missing escort named Shannon Gilbert near Oak Beach. During that search, in December, they found 4 women along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. People call them the Gilgo Four: Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. They were found close together. Most were wrapped in burlap. It was chilling. Then the search expanded and more remains turned up in 2011, along that same roadway, and into Nassau County near Tobay Beach. Some victims were dismembered, some weren't. Bits were found miles apart. We're talking places like Manorville inland by power lines, and then the Barrier Island pull-offs along Ocean Parkway, plus finds tied to Fire Island and Tobay Beach. The spread was wild. Multiple jurisdictions, marshes, tides, wind. Nature literally moved evidence around, and it made everything harder. Victims were mostly petite adult women doing sex work, many advertising on Craigslist. One unidentified victim had XY chromosomes and was found in women's clothing, sometimes called Asian doe. So, yeah, the victim profile wasn't perfectly uniform. Also, there's that black leather belt with the letters HM or WH that police say the perpetrator handled. And somewhere in all this, there's Shannon Gilbert's death. Officials leaned toward accidental drowning with the autopsy listed undetermined. A private pathologist later pointed to possible hyoid damage. It's still disputed.
And for years, agencies were tripping over each other. The friction alone could fuel 10 conspiracy forums.
Okay, next up, the theory. Some believe there were actually 2 killers working the same hunting grounds. People call them the Manorville Dismemberer and the Gilgo Burlap Killer. The idea is this. One guy did the meticulous dismemberment inland. Think Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack torsos in Manorville with plastic sheeting and that whole measured vibe. While the other guy was the beach specialist. Fast dumps along Ocean Parkway with burlap wraps.
Wait. 2 separate serials, sharing a corridor like flatmates.
Hear me out. Split site disposal is a thing here. Torsos inland, skulls or extremities later near Gilgo. That looks like someone was actively scrambling linkage and jurisdiction. And remember, in 2011, The Independent even reported investigators floated the 2-killer possibility. It wasn't just Reddit threads, it was a legit working theory for a while. Add in the taunting calls from Melissa's phone, traced to places like Madison Square Garden and Midtown Manhattan. This guy sounded like a city creature, comfortable in crowds, cocky, almost performing. Meanwhile, the Barrier Island operator knows gated Oak Beach shortcuts, wind windows, and which shoulder turnouts swallow you in darkness. 2 different vibes, 2 signatures. And the environment helps blur lines. Marshes, currents, storms could redistribute parts and mask patterns, which a savvy offender might exploit.
Or one offender who adapts over years. Offenders change methods when they learn what works, or when circumstances change. It's not Hogwarts. There aren't fixed houses for serials.
Sure, but the heterogeneity keeps stacking. You've got an unidentified XY chromosome victim in women's clothing, among mostly petite women in sex work. You've got the belt with HM or WH, ambiguous. You've got Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor linked by dismemberment and Manorville, but then other remains popping up on the coast. For years, agencies barely shared info. That vacuum is where the 2-predator idea thrived. Totally get why people still back it. And the swapping theory gets bolder. Some believe the two traded or placed parts across jurisdictions to muddy the waters, knowing Suffolk and Nassau weren't exactly best friends. One a carpenter of absence inland, the other a commuter of horror on the parkway. It's the duet thing. I'm not saying they high-fived, but the patterns feel like different hands.
So let me get this straight. Your opera has two voices, the dismemberer in the pines and the burlap guy by the surf. Cute theory. Here's the problem. Evidence. In 2023, Rex Heumann was arrested. Then in 2024, he was charged in more cases, including Maureen Brainard Barnes, Jessica Taylor, and even Sandra Costilla from 1993. By the end of 2024, he's indicted for Valerie Mack. Those two, Taylor and Mack, are the Manorville torsos linked to Gilgo parts, right? That bridges your inland and beach clusters under one bloke. And in 2026, he pleaded guilty to 7 murders and admitted to an 8th, Karen Vergata, the woman long called Fire Island Jane Doe, or Jane Doe number 7. That admission ties together Fire Island legs from 1996 with Tobay Beach skull and teeth from 2011 through genetic genealogy ID done in 2023. Again, one offender fits both sides of the map. Plus, the forensics aren't gentle. Investigators had phone records showing contact with multiple victims, an email account searching the investigation, and digital searches for extremely violent material, including child pornography and images of victims and their relatives. Mitochondrial DNA from a discarded pizza crust linked to hair on burlap, which anchors him to the burlap scenes. And a witness called out a dark green first-gen Chevy Avalanche, which is in his records.
Okay, but what about the hairs that matched his wife's mtDNA on or near 3 victims? Doesn't that scream more than one person?
Not really. Investigators said the wife and kids were out of state during the suspected killings. Secondary transfer from shared household items is entirely plausible. It actually argues against a second killer. It's consistent with one household contaminant, riding along on the primary offender's clothing or tools. And remember, the cluster once included Tanya Jackson, Peaches, and her toddler, Baby Doe. In early 2025, they were identified. By late 2025, Andrew Dykes, the child's father, was arrested and charged. Those murders were removed from the Lisk narrative. That shrinks the heterogeneity people leaned on to argue multiple offenders.
I hear you. But victim diversity still exists, and the taunting calls from Midtown smell psychologically different from the quiet beach disposer. Like 2 personas at least.
Or one offender compartmentalizing. Offenders can revel in urban anonymity for the taunts and switch to logistics mode for disposal. Also, agencies finally got their act together. The FBI formally joined in 2015 after the former police chief, who'd blocked them, was out and later imprisoned on unrelated charges. A multi-agency task force pulled telecom, forensics, and the avalanche tip together. Occam's razor points to one orchestrator, learning, evolving, and exploiting the landscape for decades.
So your bottom line is one extremely adaptive killer, spanning from the early 1990s through the 2010s, who knew the barrier islands, knew the power line cuts, and got cocky enough to make calls from Midtown.
That's where the evidence points now. Fun note, a 2011 New York Times profile predicted a white male familiar with the South Shore and burlap access. That's pretty on the nose in hindsight.
All right. I'll plant my flag anyway. I think the Manorville dismemberer and the Gilgo burlap killer theory still explains the early investigative contradictions. Maybe 2 predators overlapped. Maybe one copied the other. Maybe they even swapped sites. I know the plea ties so much together, but I can't shake the double signature feel of those locations. Isn't that bananas?
And I'll say the single orchestrator is scary enough. The tech trail, the pizza crust empty DNA, the avalanche, the phones, the burlap, unifies inland and coast. Conspiracy alert is cancelled, at least for this corridor.
Back to the facts. The greater unanswered question for me is this. What's more terrifying? Evil as one person quietly learning 2 languages of violence? Or evil as 2 people harmonizing in the dark? I still get chills thinking about it.
For anyone who wants a deeper dive into the victims' lives and the early investigation, read Lost Girls by Robert Kolker. It's devastating and important.
So anyway, I'm going to swing by this allegedly haunted bridge tonight. EMF, spirit box, the works. Can you imagine if something answers on the recorder?
I will be at home with a kettle and a documentary that does not spike my cortisol. Text me if the ghost starts speaking Morse code.
Thank you for listening to The Veil. Unsolved and Unbelievable. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep looking past the obvious. We'll see you next time.